We begin tonight with another test of America's ability to be shocked by Donald Trump, who has very deliberately shocked America to the point where he hopes that shock has been replaced by acceptance. The president is a Russian operative. That sounds like the description of a bad Hollywood screenplay, but it is real. And it is Vladimir Putin's greatest achievement. Decades after America's victory in the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union, the president of the United States is now helping the president of Russia help the president of the United States to get reelected, so that the president of Russia will have 4 more years of the president of the United States who he wants in the Oval Office. This is one of those shocking news days, if you retain the capacity to be shocked in the Trump era by the Trump regime, which might be better labeled the Trump-Putin regime.
Okay, folks. This is really where Lawrence O'Donnell has turned into John Nash in A Beautiful Mind, where he's got all the papers on the wall and about with the CIA and the stuff, and it looks all and he's clearly having an episode. I mean, the guy's having a problem. He's having a breakdown. What Lawrence O'Donnell did there on MSNBC, a cable news channel that is distributed into 100 million American homes, parent company is NBC, and NBC is owned by an even bigger company. I don't even know who it is anymore. And this is supposed to be mainstream cable news. That little speech he just gave there about the President of the United States is insane. I mean, he's actually crazy if he believes that. It's reckless. It's stupid. It's unsupported by any actual evidence. And yet, do you think that there'll be a moment this week where Lawrence O'Donnell, the big kind of blustering bully that he is, you think that he'll give a retraction and say, wow, I was way off on that? No, of course not. Has Rachel Maddow ever apologized to her audience for all of the Russia collusion, hyperbolics, and absurdity? No, never. Because this is an emotional and psychological need for Democrats, that the president, who is better than their president was for 8 years, this president that they say is a monster, a buffoon, a moron, incapable, corrupt, a liar, is beating them in every way that they can be beaten. And the only thing that they have at the end of the day is this Russia, Trump is a traitor, Trump cheated fairy tale that they tell themselves. So they can't let it go. Because if they were to let this go, then what do they have? Bernie Sanders, Mayor Pete, Joe Biden, if he can remember where he is. So we are in a dangerous place because of the rise of socialism in the Democratic Party, but also because of the denialism, the delusional Democrat left. Democrat Party overall, really. This is on cable news. This is not somebody who has, a YouTube channel with 10,000 subscribers. This is on cable news. You have a multimillionaire TV news host who is calling the president a Russian asset, an agent of Russia, the Trump-Putin regime. And I could sit here and say, really? Because we've been doing a lot. The president has done many things that Putin does not want him to do, that are aggressive toward Russia. Some would even argue too aggressive toward Russia. And what exactly do we get in response for this? Oh, more of the same claims, more of the same absurdity. Now, this has all come out in the last week because of what we were told was an intelligence assessment that suggested to lawmakers who promptly scurried off and leaked this to a compliant Democrat media because they thought it would be a helpful anti-Trump narrative. But there was a briefing in which there was a discussion about whether Russia was interfering in the election. No gauging, no assessing of, is that interference even really noteworthy? Is it important? Does it matter? Does it change anything? No, just interference. And as I've said to you, every presidential election has fraud. It's a fact. Every presidential election in this country, there's been voter fraud. But does anyone really think? Now, sometimes, if you look at Lyndon Johnson, voter fraud probably did change the outcome of the election. But would it be fair to say that that the last election was fraudulent and the president didn't really win because somebody voted 10 times in one voting booth somewhere and then went to prison for it? No, of course not. Right? That's absurd. It is an absurd thing to believe and to say that the Russians are so skilled at internet manipulation of the American mind. We've got billions and billions of dollars of media apparatuses that are constantly clashing and pushing narratives, and Russia just can swoop in and tip it to one side or the other? If our democracy is that fragile, is it even really worth calling it a democracy? It's a joke. But what the real joke is here is that people believe that that's possible. Of course, the Russians can't do that. Of course, the Russians aren't in some position to just change American minds and all of a sudden the candidate that they want. Remember, the horrible thing that's supposed to happen here, the thing that we're all supposed to be, oh my gosh, the Russians are undermining our democracy, is that Donald Trump is going to be president again. Oh no, that's so terrible. Well, they say it's terrible because he's a Russian agent. You see, this is all circular. We should be worried because the Russians are intervening on behalf of Trump because the Russians want Trump to win, because the Russians will then be able to continue to work with him, so they intervene on behalf of Trump. No, none of this is real. None of this is true. This is all just fantasy land. This is all crazy. But they won't give it up. We had the Mueller special counsel. I mean, we've been through this as a country already. And I have to take a little moment here. I told you they'd come back to Russia collusion. As soon as the impeachment thing was over, I did say it. I think you guys got to give a little bit of credit, a little bit. I'm taking a little bow here in the Freedom Hut. I've been telling you they're going to do this because I understand the insane liberal mind, because I'm surrounded by it here in New York City. That's one part of it. So now we have the return of this. It's all based on this leaked assessment that was given. Oh, that's right before the Nevada caucuses to try to mess up Bernie Sanders. They included Bernie Sanders in it too. That Russia wants Trump to win and Russia wants Bernie Sanders to win. Because I've actually read the KGB archives from the Mitrokhin archive, which is a very worthwhile exercise, I can tell you that Russian analysis of American politics, stretching back for the last 100 years, but particularly in the height of the Cold War when the Soviet Union was obsessed with understanding American intentions, their understanding of American politics is pathetic. They do not understand the nuances. They do not understand what's really going on here in any meaningful way. And that's always been the case. They grossly overstate because they approach it. Their analysts inside the Russian government approach American politics with their own vision of, well, clearly this person wants to be an authoritarian. Clearly this person wants to seize power and crush the opposition and never have any election again. I mean, this is the way that they've been assessing American politics for a long time. Who's going to be the great friend of Russia? And think about the fixation here as well, that this is so important to the Russian state. We're not about to go to war with Russia. What do the Russians really think? How much do they really gain? They don't know. And what do they lose by interfering? Well, that still remains to be seen, right? Democrats sound like they practically want to go to war over this. But who is the candidate that the Russians would most want? And this is a game, I would note, that the Democrats play shamelessly all the time. You know, they would say that if you opposed Obama on counterterrorism, on anything counterterrorism related, it's you're doing Al-Qaeda's work for them. That was the line. And now if you don't trash Trump on everything, you're doing Putin's bidding. I mean, this is what people who are not very bright think by saying others will believe them to be bright, right? All you have to do is say this thing about Putin's puppet and the Russian ass, which is why Lawrence O'Donnell does that. I think he's probably too smart to really believe that trash, but he knows that his audience likes to be told it because they've gone and told all their friends. And because they've gone and told all their friends this, they want that belief reinforced that this is what smart people say. This is what the good people say. It's a deeply stupid belief. And now the problem they have is that this briefing that launched the latest round of Russia collusion hysteria, it turns out that it might have been incorrect. That the person who came, who was trusted in the intelligence community, look, I've ran intelligence community briefings for the president in the Oval Office. I was in my late 20s. So I've done this before. I know exactly how this goes. Sure, there's the paper, there are the assessments, there's the highly classified information you're passing along. A lot of which, by the way, a lot of classified information, you'd say that's classified, but that's a whole other conversation. It's like, it looks like a headline in the Wall Street Journal. Who cares? But the president or the policymaker, in this case, members of Congress, can then ask questions. They ask questions. They say, okay, well, what about this? What about that? And then if you're the briefer, you're supposed to always defer to the internal expertise of your home agency, et cetera, but you tend to be like, all right, I'm in here with the big dogs. I'm gonna throw them a bone. I'm gonna give them an answer. And sometimes I can get you a little bit beyond where you want to be. Going beyond your brief, they call it. Makes sense, right? And that seems to be what happened here. So now they had to try to walk this back. The leak to the press that the press breathlessly reported on, which then turned into Russia's interfering in the election because they want to help Donald Trump, turned into, well, Russia's interfering. We don't know how much, and we don't know that they want to support Trump. We just know that Trump's probably someone they think they can work with. That was the actual takeaway. And to this, I'd want to ask, they think they can work with Trump more than they could work with some wimpy novice left-wing Democrat? Really? Let's unpack this one for a second. They think they could work. The Russians think they could work with Trump more easily than they could work with peacenik, commie-loving Bernie Sanders, who timed his honeymoon with a pre-scheduled trip to the Soviet Union, came back and actually said that the bread lines weren't so bad because at least people were getting bread, unlike starving like they do in other countries. There are a lot of countries where there are no bread lines and people aren't starving, turns out. But that didn't stop Bernie Sanders from saying that, and he has not even repudiated any of this. So the latest round of this Russia collusion stuff has now turned into a bunch of pundits and media outlets that were running on a falsehood, but you could see it triggers right away that part in their brain that goes, oh, yes, here we go. Russia, Trump, all this stuff, all of our fears about a Trump reelection, perhaps this will deliver us from that. And this also excuses the Dems, the libs, for the socialists for being so wrong about Trump for so many years now and lying to their audiences and misrepresenting what's really happening in this country to their audiences. And then they pull Bernie Sanders into this too. Does anyone notice this? Of course, you notice this, but I mean that rhetorically. Is anyone noticing how it is now the default position of the political and media establishment that if you are outside the establishment and a threat to their power structure, you're a Russian agent, including Bernie Sanders, which I have to say is just goes to show you that the Democrats are willing to do whatever they have to do. The ones in power will do whatever they have to do to stay in power, including they'll eat their own. I mean, they'll go after their own side on this. Here's James Carville, who is doing the whole, I'm going to war game this out from inside Putin's mind. James Carville is a, reasonably entertaining left-wing commentator or Democrat commentator. He's more of an old-school Democrat than a left-winger. But he does not know anything about the Kremlin or Russia. Play two.
The happiest person right now, it's about 1:15 Moscow time. This thing is going very well for Vladimir Putin. I promise you. He's probably staying up watching us right now. How you doing, Vlad?
That's absolutely right. And James, there's reporting that that's exactly what the intelligence agencies think is going on. I mean, the Sanders campaign was briefed that Putin is helping him or plans to help him in the primary. Amazing.
And I don't think Sanders wants Putin to help. The only reason, why would Vladimir Putin be helping Bernie Sanders? Of course, because he wants Donald Trump to win.
Oh, so there we go. You want Donald Trump to win. What? He's going to help Sanders? Because Carville is so sure that Trump will beat Sanders, even though I remember 2016 when everybody was so sure, except for a lot of people in this audience, everybody was so sure that Hillary was going to beat Trump. So the Russians are making these picks based on a certainty that there's no way they could have because even the people following this most closely in this country don't have it. They're assuming omniscience. It's absurd. They're assuming omniscience of the other side because it plays into what they want to believe. I mean, our political pundit class is just covering itself in dishonor, and people shouldn't listen to them, shouldn't trust them anymore. You should just trust individuals that you have a record, you have a history with, that you know what they believe, you know what they have stood for, and they also enforce some degree of self-accountability. The Democratic establishment has learned nothing in the last 3 years. They changed nothing. And now they're afraid of Sanders as if they didn't see Sanders coming. What do they think happened in 2016? But, oh, that's right. Putin now will help Sanders as if he really could help Sanders. He's going to help Sanders because Putin's so sure that Trump will beat Sanders, because Putin's so sure that Trump is a better person for him to work with as the president of the United States. These are all massive assumptions. This is flimsy analysis. The entire mainstream media is running around parroting this crap. They're a joke, but it's a very unfunny joke.
I think we should be very clear that when we say Russia's helping Bernie Sanders,
what does that mean? Yes.
They are not trying to help Bernie Sanders be president. They are trying to give Trump the opponent that Trump wants. They helped Bernie Sanders in 2016 to divide the Democratic Party.
See, this is easier for them. There are a lot of people running around saying this on TV. This is now the narrative that's being spread in the left wing of American politics. The Democratic Party elites are running around saying, oh, Sanders is Putin's choice because this has become a reflexive thing. We don't like Trump, so Trump must be Putin's choice. We don't like Sanders, so Sanders must be Putin's choice. As if Putin is running a country with an economy that's maybe a couple $1 trillion a year total. I mean, Russia is not squaring off against us as some behemoth that we have to be worried. I mean, the one that we have to be worried about is China, but which Trump understands. But this creation of Russia as a country that we have to be constantly worried about. Russia doesn't matter that much, crazy libs. Stop being so crazy. Putin is not determining the president of the United States. I mean, it's a real mass psychosis that's going on. You know, it reminds me, people always bring up the Salem witch trials. They forget that there were periods in medieval history where there would be these mass psychoses about witches, and there were witch burnings, and it would happen, and they would burn large numbers of women who were childless and didn't have husbands, and they'd find they're on the outskirts of society, and they would burn them because everyone got all freaked out about these people are witches, of course, which was crazy and not true, but everyone gets all worked up about it. Oh, they get all scared. Whew. Man, these Democrats, this Russia stuff, it's amazing. I do not believe that it is possible to be intelligent and have good judgment and still think that Putin is a determining factor in U.S. elections at this point. I don't think it's possible, which means there are a lot of people that we're supposed to think are really smart that I'm telling you are just not very smart. That's a real thing, too, which the establishment hates that recognition.
What I've heard from the FBI, what I've heard is that Russia would like Bernie Sanders to win the Democrat nomination. They'd probably like him to be president, understandably, because he wants to spend money on social programs and probably would have to take it out of the military. So that would make sense. And look, the Russians have always tried to interfere with elections because they want to divide Americans. They want to undermine our democracy. But the idea that they want to influence the election and somehow cause the president to win, I just don't see it.
That last point that he made, I don't really get into the, who do they want more, Bernie or Trump? I mean, I think quite clearly the Russians would be better off from their perspective having an inept socialist buffoon as the president of the United States, who's also, very opposed to military spending. I mean, that's all real, but, we're not the Russians. We don't know. Maybe Putin just likes that Trump is such a manly man. By the way, do we have just as a quick digression here, President Trump is in India right now, and he's taken the podium with Prime Minister Modi, and there are over 100,000 people. By the way, the polls show that Indians like Trump as much as they liked Obama. So, the Indian people, clear majority of them like Trump. That's a country of 1 billion people. I thought everyone hated Trump. I thought the whole world hates Trump. Well, India likes him just as much as Obama. And Obama was supposed to be the president the whole world was in love with, right? So, you mean that, European states that have no small bit of envy about America, by the way, they don't like Trump's brashness and they prefer the more internationalist approach of Obama? Great, who cares? Do we have the, they're playing Macho Man? Is that, no, we don't have, okay, well. They were playing Macho Man when he went into the stadium. Because I want to be a Macho Man. This was in India, which I thought was pretty funny. 100,000 plus Indians cheering, screaming, and shouting praise for the President of the United States. Pretty awesome to see. India is a country, by the way, we should be getting closer to. It's a multi-confessional democracy, economy that's going to become just increasingly a major engine of growth for the whole world. India is a country that America should be holding close to its bosom and making a good buddy of in every way that we can. There was a problem there for a long time because of a Cold War rivalry, speaking of Russia and the Soviet Union, and India had gone in the socialist camp for a while. And that was a problem for us. And so we also worked with Pakistan because of the Soviets in Afghanistan. And so we had this whole Pakistan-India divide, and we're still working through some of the bad feeling that existed there. But we should be very close allies with India. Anyway, back to the realities here of the Russia collusion absurdity. The Democrats have, if you're going to talk about being Putin's puppet, there is nothing that could be more clear evidence of this as a successful information operation than the amount of chaos and energy and time and media focus on interfering in our election, because that now has created this whole, tens of millions of Americans feel like Putin can just alter our elections on a whim, which does undermine confidence in them. But they only believe that because the Democrat media is such a bunch of sore losers because Hillary lost that they're willing to play along with this. Putin is able to pay a few guys in a basement. I mean, think about what we're really talking about here. Paying, a few dozen people on the internet to create memes. I have friends who are American who all they do all day long is try to create, political memes and try to do commentary. And it is one of the hardest businesses in the world to be in. It's really challenging. There's a lot of competition. You think a couple of dudes named, Oleg, Sergey, and Ivan sitting in a basement in Moscow are going to be able to, unlock the magic key to change perception in a few key states? I mean, just think about what they're suggesting here. It defies any logic. It defies any real analysis. But this is where we are, and it's troubling to see just how much the left is willing to buy into all of this and go for this. By the way, just a couple of words from a president. We have this from President Trump in India. Here, play 22.
So today I say to every Indian, North and South, Hindu and Muslim, Jewish and Christian, rich and poor, young and old, take pride in the glories of your past. Unite for an even brighter future, and let our two nations always stand together as powerful defenders of peace and liberty and the hope of a better world for all of humanity. Thank you again, Prime Minister Modi, for your hospitality, and thank you, India, for this phenomenal welcome. I want to just leave by saying, God bless India. God bless the United States of America. We love you. We love you, India, very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you think that any of the president's critics who call him a racist and a white nationalist and all these other horrible and untrue things, do they even listen to what he says? I think they don't. A white nationalist president would not choose to give speeches like the ones that President Trump gives on a regular basis. President Trump wants people to do well all over the world, but first and foremost here in America. He wants the best for humanity. He wants the best for the American people, though, because that is his job. But for all Americans, of all backgrounds, all ethnicities, all colors, he repeats this over and over. His policies reflect this. But because they refuse to agree that America is the only country that's not allowed to have sovereign borders, according to the left. You can't just show up in India and be like, yeah, I want to be here. Why wouldn't you let me in? Why is India being so racist? I want to be in India. I'm just showing up. I don't have a visa, and I have no right to stay. I'm illegally in your country. Why? Every other country in the world is allowed to say, no, sorry, you actually have to obey our laws when it comes to entry. But if President Trump says you have to do that, that's racist. This is the position of the left now. This is why the left is insane. But the president gives speeches like this, and he does try I think he does try to inspire people, and there is something about this president in particular, his tenacity, his endurance, and his belief in self is infectious. It is something that no matter where you are, no matter what country you're from, when you see this president, if you are just even a little bit familiar with who he is and what his story is, there is something inspirational about the guy. For all of his flaws and all the drawbacks, which I'm also very aware of, you look at this guy and just say, what a force of nature he is. And also to see somebody who's that successful and that powerful, who doesn't feel the need to constantly either talk down to people or engage in a false humility, it's refreshing.
What's your updated thinking about a pardon for Roger Stone?
Well, I've seen a very sad thing going on with respect to Roger Stone. You have a juror that's obviously tainted. She was an activist against Trump, said bad things about Trump and said bad things about Stone. And she somehow wheedled her way onto the jury. And if that's not a tainted jury, then there is no such thing as a tainted jury. I think it's a disgrace. And I could say plenty more about that whole situation, but I'll hold it. I don't know why they gave a judgment, why the judge ruled prior to ruling on that, because in theory, you should rule on that, and then you see what happens. But the judge gave a sentence without discussing that, and I guess he's going to bring that up at a later date. But I do think this, that juror is so biased and so tainted that shouldn't happen in our criminal justice system.
Now, the president continues to talk about, now it's a criminal case that's over, and he's allowed to have his opinions on it, but he talks about this, and there's been all this criticism of whether the president should be allowed to speak about this. I understand why people want the president to keep talking about it, because there's a problem. We know there's a problem in our judicial system, in the Department of Justice, where you have an entire now generation of mostly boomers and Gen X and Gen Y people who are in positions of authority in the government, who believe that they should effectively be liberal activists in either judges' robes or in prosecutorial positions. That they have to even the score here a little bit for the left and use the power of the government to do so. How could you think, as a judge, as this judge who just sentenced Roger Stone to 3 years and 4 months, how could someone think that it's a fair trial when the jury foreperson, based on all accounts we've seen, clearly hid that she was an anti-Trump activist and hated Roger Stone? What's the point of voir dire? Why even have that exchange between members of the court, the judge, and possible jury members to find out if they have preconceived notions or if they have some bias that they would bring to this? Why do that if in a case like this you'll just say, well, okay, fine. So one major member of the jury was lying to us about this, but, no big deal. And that then just reminds me that we don't have to continue to accept there's a two-tier justice system. You're never going to get a fair trial as a Trump associate in Washington, D.C. That's for starters, because the jury pool there is just leftists, people that are just getting as close to the government as they can, getting as much out of the government as they can. You're never, ever going to be able to just count on a fair trial in Washington, D.C., in a federal court, if you have anything to do with Donald Trump. And then there's also, what about the rest of the government apparatus? And that's where we get to what they're calling Trump's deep state hit list. This is from Axios. This is great. Let me read you a little bit from this one. The Trump White House and its allies over the past 18 months assembled detailed lists of disloyal government officials to oust and trusted pro-Trump people to replace them, according to more than a dozen sources familiar with the effort who spoke to Axios. In reporting the story, I have been briefed on reviewed memos and lists the president has received since 2018, suggesting whom he should hire and fire. Most of these details have never been published. Since Trump's Senate acquittal, aides say the president has crossed a psychological line regarding what he calls the deep state. He feels his government, from justice to state to defense to homeland security, is filled with snakes. He wants them fired and replaced ASAP. The libs are all completely freaking out about this. How is the president wrong? Why should people who are known anti-Trump activists keep their positions of power and authority inside an executive branch apparatus that has been already several times over weaponized against the President of the United States? I mean, you will recall that there have been administrations in the past who, when they came in, they just cleared out all the U.S. attorneys, just cleared out a lot of federal prosecutors and replaced those positions. With Clinton did it, Bush did it, with people that they think are aligned on policy. But you see, what we have here is, in a time of intense polarization, there's a lack of belief that the other side is willing to play by fair rules and act in good faith. And when you're looking at the Department of Justice, this is where government abuse is most concerning to people. Right? I mean, you could say for the average person, it's the IRS and the DOJ that when they're politicized, there's a ripple effect to the rest of government, but also they can ruin lives. They can destroy you. That's a rogue elephant that will trample on you. So the president now, going into a second term, wanting to make sure that there are people who act in good faith in these positions, I blame the deep state Dems. I blame people like Sally Yates and Brennan and Clapper and Comey and McCabe and others for putting their own sense of political sanctimoniousness and self-righteousness ahead of doing their duty for the people of the United States. They think doing their duty is to not do their jobs because they don't like Trump and try to take Trump down. That's not their duty. They can tell themselves that all night. James Comey can walk around, acting like he's the savior of the republic. The guy's a jerk and a clown, and he broke regulations of the agency that he was supposed to be setting an example for everybody else in. And those are just matters of fact now. McCabe is a liar who not only wouldn't tell the truth about leaking information, but went around berating subordinate employees for a leak that he did. That's psycho. That's not something that a normal, well-adjusted person would do. You're going to go yell at maybe that inferior employee at the FBI. When the FBI director's yelling at you for a leak, that's scary because you can get in a lot of trouble for that. He was doing that to people. So the people that should be blamed here for the president wanting those that he can trust in these positions are the people that abused the power against the president because their candidate, Hillary Clinton, lost. It's their fault. And administrations going forward, I would note, are also going to take this approach. And they would be stupid not to. You want to leave a James Comey around? You want to leave a snake? Leave a snake behind in your living room. See what happens. Let the kids go out and play, and just let that rattler just stay around. It's probably going to be okay. No, it's not. So I think the president's exactly right here, and this is where. And remember, Comey said. So they know this too. Comey said that he could sneak those guys in because the administration was in transition, and these were people that were novices to the White House and to D.C. in some cases. That he could sneak them in transition. The White House wouldn't really know what's going on. Take advantage of the fact that they're from outside the establishment, outside the perma-bureaucracy, in order to, get a scalp from the administration really early. They knew that's what they were doing, and now Trump has learned, okay, you guys want to play rough? That's how you want to do it? Well, I'm going to make sure that we don't have people like James Comey lingering around for term 2. I mean, I can tell you this. If President Trump truly broke the law or truly abused his power, there is not one part of me, not a scintilla, nothing that makes me think that, for example, Attorney General Barr would refrain from not only calling it out, but from resigning and causing a real crisis for the administration in doing so, if the president actually broke the law and was doing something wrong. All this president is trying to do is not have people who are willing to leak, and sometimes in violation of the law itself, obstruct, undermine, and work against him from inside the government. The left is going to say, oh, this is him trying to be a dictator, and how could he do this? And it's not about him being a dictator. It's about having an executive branch that's aligned with who the actual legitimate president of the United States is. They can tell themselves all day that they're hashtag resistance and they don't have to play by these rules and that Donald Trump's victory doesn't count. They can do that, but that doesn't make it true and it doesn't make it right. So I like this. And I also think that the way that they're going forward here is going to mean that term 2 of Trump is really going to be fantastic. That's what term 2 Trump. Woo! Strap in. It's going to be good times. But we got to get there first. Eye on the prize, team. Eye on the prize.